So in 1999, The Matrix defined a genre and had us all asking, what is The Matrix? So 20 years later, with a third sequel, will they have us questioning reality once again? Will they again redefine what an action movie is? Will we once again look on in awe and say, whoa? The Matrix Resurrections is brought to us by director Lana Wachowski and stars Keanu Reeves, Carrie-Anne Moss, and Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Return to a world of two realities. One, everyday life, the other, what lies behind it. To find out if his life is a construct to truly know himself, Mr. Anderson will have to choose to follow the White Rabbit once again. So fans such as myself have been waiting for a sequel to the original Matrix trilogy for a really long time. We didn't really know where the story would go from there, seeing as how they kind of sort of tied it up, but we knew we wanted more of that badassery. And now, almost 20 years later, here we go, the fourth Matrix movie. Now, there's been lots of questions surrounding the story of this movie. And while there are some things in it that we don't know and we do learn, the movie's not really as full of secrets and spoilers as you would think. Really, the only things of consequence that are revealed to us is how is it that Neo and Trinity are still alive, why Morpheus looks different, and why the machines are seemingly up to their old tricks. And we do get answers to all these things, but I didn't find the answers to be as satisfying as I would have hoped. The Neo and Trinity thing is interesting. I like where they went with that, but the other stuff it didn't have the same impact. Now, one thing I can say about the story of this film that a lot of people had a complaint about the original sequels is that it's nowhere near as convoluted as those films were. There's no architect point of the story that is like overly convoluted and we're just really confused and trying to figure out exactly what the hell is going on here. Now, on the flip side of that, it's nowhere near as grand as those films were either. There's a lot of stuff going on in this world, but this story really just focuses on the love story between Neo and Trinity. And while that did cause the film to not be as grand and epic as the original three, I did kind of like this approach. Yeah, I did miss a bit of that grand scale of the other films, but it was nice to just kind of have a pretty straightforward story for one. And there's no mind-bending twists like the others either, for better or worse. Now, based on what we had seen about the movie, I had figured it was going to be really meta, and it is, but it's nowhere near as meta as I was thinking it was gonna be. It's there, and it does play off the fact that everybody knows what the Matrix is, but it's not nearly as much as I was expecting. And I mean that in a good way. I was worried that this movie was gonna be a bit too self-aware, a bit too meta. Overall, this story does fit in line with the other Matrix stories we've gotten in the past. However, this one is a bit drawn out at times. This movie's 2.5 hours long, and there's just no real reason that it should have been that long. I can't really say that the movie was ever flat out boring, but there were definitely some parts I was thinking, okay, let's move it along. We keep going along this way, and I'm gonna start looking at my watch. When I start doing that, I start going into boredom. It's not a lot of the time, and I'm not saying they had to cut out a lot of the film, but they definitely could have shaved off about 20 minutes or so. Something else about the movie is that it had a lot more comedy than the originals did. It's not like a laugh out loud Farley Brothers comedy or anything, but there is definitely more comedy in this sequel than the other film. And while this does cause a bit of a tonal switch at times, it does work. I mean, the comedy here is funny for the most part. Another thing I was concerned about when it came to this film was the look of it. They had mentioned that while filming this movie, they used all natural lighting and they were kind of coming at it from a different approach. And I am happy to report that the movie does look great. This is a really nice looking flick. However, that being said, it doesn't have that Matrix look that the original films did, including the sequel. You know that look I'm talking about, when they're inside the Matrix versus when they're outside of it. Beyond the fact that outside of the Matrix is post-apocalyptic and inside the Matrix is nowadays, of course you know that way, but just the overall look of inside the Matrix. It had a very artificial, kind of sterile look. We don't get that as much here. There are some parts of it that do look artificial, but that's because they're CG, so of course they look artificial. In the first film, they would take real-world locations and the way that they lit them and shot them and just all the little details in them just made them look artificial, and we do lose that with this film. Now, the movie still looks great. I'm not going to take that from it, but it does lose that Matrix feel while they're in the Matrix. The effects all look really great too, but it's 2021, that's kind of a given. We expect the effects to look good here, and they don't disappoint. Everything we get here does line up nicely with the original films, it just all looks better. One of the things that the Matrix films have always been known for was their kick-ass action scene. And this movie does have some really well done action scenes. However, none of them quite stand out like the original trilogy's action scene. They're all very solid, but this film doesn't have its marquee action scene like the original films did. There's no lobby shootout scene, or freeway chase scene, or Neo versus Smith in-fight scene. There's just not any of those really big, over-the-top, film-defining scenes in this movie. Once again, what's here looks great and is done very well, and it is still exciting. It's just not that same level. Though I guess that also calls back to this story having a bit of a smaller scale than those films as well, seeing as how it does just focus on Neo and Trinity's love story. So you gotta kind of take the good with the bad here. Overall, even though the film doesn't retain that signature Matrix look, and it doesn't have a defining action scene in it, it is still really well made and looks great. Our performances are all really good here. They're what we've come to expect from the Matrix films. Reeves and Moss still work really well together, and all the other returning faces do a good job too. I was worried they were going to take a bunch of new characters, put them front and center, and sideline all the series' favorites. But that's not what they did here. Jessica Henwick as Bugs was one of those characters that, based on the promotional material we had seen, I thought she was going to kind of take over the movie, but she doesn't. And her character was actually a lot better than I was initially thinking she would be. She has things of importance to do in the film, she's not annoying, and she fits nicely within the mythos. And Henwick does a great job of standing next to these iconic series favorites. Overall, the performances were all really good and fit in line with the Matrix films up to this point. Guys, The Matrix Resurrections was an entertaining and exciting film overall, and I am interested to see where the series goes from here. It's a much smaller story than we're used to with the Matrix films, and that kind of goes throughout everything in the film. It doesn't really have a marquee scene, and that mind-bending story twist that we're used to with these films, we just don't really get here. However, what we do get, while a bit different, is still really entertaining. It was great to see old favorites back doing what they do best, as well as some new characters that I was surprised to see did a good job as well. The story's interesting and gives us some answers to questions that we've all had for quite a long time. And in pure spectacle, while it doesn't quite outdo the original trilogy, as far as narrative goes, it definitely outdoes the sequels and is absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
This is an entertaining, worthy follow-up to the original film. And if you were a fan of the action, but maybe not so much the narrative of the sequels, I think you might find something here to like. While this one doesn't quite live up to the originals in the action department, it does do a very solid job with that, and the narrative is much better. So if you're looking for a solid follow-up to the Matrix films one night, then check out The Matrix Resurrections, and I think you're gonna have a really good time with it. So there it is, guys, my review of The Matrix Resurrections. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits to go along with that, like these guys, and possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg C and Dragon Khan. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Mega City.
I still know Kung Fu.
So I'm not going to spoil anything here, but you may have noticed there was one character that's kind of an important character that I didn't talk about, and that would be Morpheus. As many, if not all of you already know, Morpheus in this film is played by Yahya Abdul-Mateen II, though in the original trilogy he was played by Lawrence Fishburne. And Mateen did do a good job here. I didn't have a problem with him or his portrayal. And we're also given a reason as to why Morpheus looks different now. I just didn't like that reason. And regardless of how well Mateen did in this film, it still wasn't Lawrence Fishburne. I don't give a damn what the movie says. They brought back other original actors for these characters. Why the hell would you not bring back Lawrence Fishburne for Morpheus? I'm sorry, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. Nothing against you, man, but hashtag not my Morpheus. Bring back the Fishburne, bitch!